apart from the X-ray, gamma ray and the cosmic rays as ionizing radiations, some other radioactive particles like the alpha, beta and gamma are also known as ionizing radiation because they are generated from any radioactive decay from the radioactive element, okay, and causes ionization or the causes ionization of any neutral atom or the molecule. Okay. Now I move to the next topic, that is radioactive pollution and their sources. So what is the radioactive pollutions and their sources? Basically, in our environment, lots of radiations, so many radiations are there and we are exposed every day, and those radiations are known as the background radiation. That is known as background radiation. Background radiation. Okay. So this background radiation is not the radioactive radiation. It may be the UV light. Some man can be exposed by the UV light. Some man can be exposed by some other radiations in the electromagnetic radiation. Okay, that are called the background radiation. Apart from the background radiation, okay, the radioactive decay from the radioactive element that can cause detrimental effect to the living systems are known as radioactive pollution. Okay, are known as radioactive pollutions, and such the presence of such radiation in the environment, okay, can be seen via natural process or by anthropogenic process. Okay, so it has two sources basically for the radioactive pollution. It has two sources. One is natural sources, another is the anthropogenic sources. Okay, so the first sources is the natural, and the second one is the anthropogenic. Anthropogenic means the man-made. Basically, we are the responsible for the generation of such radiations in the environment. So, what are the different sources of the natural sources of radioactive emission or the radioactive radiation? Okay, so the first one is the some atomic radioactive materials or element is present in the mineral or ore. So the first natural sources of radioactive radiation is the atomic radioactive materials is present in the mineral or ore. So what does it mean? It is basically for the mining of uranium source. Uranium is a kind of radioactive element. Why we need uranium? Because we can convert lots of energy by the fusion of uranium element. Okay, that is why the scientists as well as the industry searches for the uranium in any ore or as a mineral. Okay, so uranium is one of the main source for the radioactive materials. So when in the mining when we search for the uranium, some other radioactive elements like radon gas, okay, radon gas Rn 86222, okay. So this radon gas is also there in the atmosphere, and it also causes the radioactive decay in the environment as well as atmosphere. Not only that, if we see the half-life of this radon species, if we see the half-life of the radon species, T half is known as the half-life. Okay, half-life. Half-life. The T half is only 3.82 days for the radon species. So it is not to worry with the radon species because it can easily destroy after 3.82 days to form another new element. But the problem is the radon is formed from its precursor element, that is radium. And this radium 226 and this is 88, and this radium is the responsible for the most of the radioactive decay because the T half of radium is 1602 days. Okay, 1602 radioactive decay because the T half of radium is 1602 days. Okay, 1602 days. Okay, more than that of the radon species. That is why the long-lived radioactive elements are very dangerous for the environment as well as the atmosphere. Okay, so this is the one of the natural sources of the radioactive pollution. Second one is the cosmic ray. So we know the cosmic ray is originated from the stars or the galaxy by some nuclear reactions in the universe, right? So this causes or this generates some radioactive elements or radioactive radiation, and that comes to the Earth's surface, and it will cause again the radioactive pollution. Third natural source is the presence of huge amount of the radon gas in the mines. Okay, radon gas in the mines, because we know the radon gas is already a radioactive element, so it will cause the damage to the living system. And the last natural source is the sources are the presence of uranium, radium, and thorium, as well as potassium 40, okay, and carbon 40. All are radioactive materials, and you can find all the radioactive elements in the environment. So how these radioactive elements can pollute the environment? We can easily explain on the basis of potassium. So we know the potassium is very much essential for the soil, for its fertility. Okay, so if this potassium is the radioactive and normal potassium is the K39. K39 is the normal potassium and K40 is the radioactive potassium. And we know the potassium is very much essential for the soil due to its fertility, right? Now, when the radioactive potassium is present in the soil, so the plants can consume the radioactive potassium, thereby the plants are already polluted, or it will be contaminated by the radioactive materials. And if we consume the plants, okay, then we are indirectly indirectly contaminated, or we have indirectly toxicity by taking the K40, that is radioactive potassium. Okay, so these are all the natural sources of the radioactive pollution, right? Now the second one is the anthropogenic or the man-made sources. Anthropogenic or the man-made sources of the radioactive pollution. So again it has it can be formed by different ways. Like the first one is the diagnostic, medical application. So we know for the diagnosis some radioactive materials or the radioactive elements are used frequently nowadays. For X-ray, for CT scan, or for treating cancer cells by the radiotherapy, the doctors frequently use the radioactive ray or the radiations. Since we are using such rays, therefore we are exposed by all the radioactive radiations, and this is a kind of radioactive pollution by the man-made. Okay. Second one is the nuclear test. Okay. Some nuclear tests are required for the generation of, because the nuclear tests are required. Why? Because the generation of electricity or the other sources. Okay. But the problem is the nuclear tests are happened in the atmosphere. Therefore, the radioactive dust materials are consumed by the atmosphere, okay, only by the atmosphere only, and we, the living organism as well as the non-living organism, can consume the radioactive dust from the environment. That is why it is the main issue for the radioactive pollution. Okay.